leadership also talks about making sure that we not walk in front of people, but with people, next to them, behind them.
What distinguishes the leaders from the non-leaders are the ones who don't care about the title, who just lead, whether they're an intern or a CEO.
Possess some kind of energy or era based on our upbringing of having nothing. And I think those are the elements that really shape of who I am today.
People underestimate the power of failure because you cannot be successful without failing.
Leadership is not the goal. It's a means to an end.
So welcome everybody to this special podcast series called Tech Meets Curacao, powered by Ngrane in collaboration with 𝐶NEX, Curacao Investment and Export Promotion Agency. This recording will take place during the week of the Next Web conference, and the goal of this podcast is to bring inspired voices together with roots from Curacao to talk about creativity, AI, future of tech, and today's topic is leadership. Next to me I have Miles,
Yes.
and I have Samantha and Daniel, and in a moment I'll ask them to introduce themselves. So enjoy this episode. So Miles, can you please introduce yourself?
Miles Mercera. I'm part of the Dutch Caribbean, living in Curacao. People, I'll always ask me, where are you from? I always try to navigate from born in the Netherlands, raised on the ABC Island. So I'm a Dutch Kingdom kid. I'm a proud of the Dutch Kingdom. I'm very proud of that. And the past decade living in Curacao, supporting as well several different roles. Most people know me from tourism, the tourism guy, but now switching roles as well to something with, let's say, more substance, but as well more curiosity from my side to learn and explore new avenues in life. Thank you. Samantha?
My name is Samantha Flores. I also come from Curacao. I have been in the Netherlands for a long time, 20 plus years. I'm currently a senior director at Nike, where I lead the digital channels, so Nike.com, Nike apps and sneaker apps. And next to that, I'm also the founder of Powerhouse Code, which is a platform to help women advance their career and unlock the opportunities that they deserve.
Thank you. Daniel?
Daniel Beltran. Also a kid from Curacao, living in the Netherlands for 10 years. And now living in Denmark for an additional 10 years. I'm the director of Deloitte Human Capital Strategy and Technology business. I'm responsible for our Nordics offering. It's called Digital Workplace. And have Curacao in my heart. And happy to be here.
Okay, thank you for joining. The sort of first question is, what does leadership mean to you all? So, Miles, what does leadership mean to you?
What does leadership mean to me? The moment I heard the question, the first thing I in my mind came to the cliche as would be, it's not about titles and it's not about that. It's not about the position. But from my perspective, from a young age, I've always seen leadership as a vehicle to bring people together. And to me, leadership talks about curiosity. Leadership also talks about making sure that we do not walk in front of people, but with people, next to them, behind them, and sometimes in front just to push. But at the end of the day, it's about connecting and connecting the dots between energies, between people, between ideas, between where we want to go. And to me, that is the essence of what leadership is all about. And there are, of course, several theories of what actually it is based on the theory. But from a human perspective, I always try to think of it in a simple way. Curiosity in the sense of leaders always, in terms of leadership, always try to dream bigger and aspire for something that is sometimes out of the reach of your everyday way of thinking. And how do you transform that vision or that idea into a common goal where everybody feels included and everybody feels that they're also moving towards that. So at the end of the day, it's about people and managing and understanding and accepting and living with people.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Miles, that leadership is not a title, because I also really, really strongly believe that it's not about a title. And in my workplace, there's so many people who think once I get a promotion, once I get a title, once somebody tells me, you can lead now, you have permission to lead, then they start to lead. And in my experience, what distinguishes the leaders from the non-leaders are the ones who don't care about the title, who just lead, whether they're an intern or a CEO, and bring change and bring different perspectives and share their perspective unapologetically. So to me, that's leadership. It's definitely, like you say, not a title, etc. It's how can you bring about change? How can you change the way people think? And how can you move either a team or a business or a department forward without the title? And I think that's really what makes a leader.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And just before you ask the question, I want to go ahead and answer it, because for me, it's very much similar to what you just said, Samantha. Leadership, for me at least, is not necessarily being in the front. It's not about ego. It's more about being in the back and the ability to be comfortable having to make unpopular decisions when hard decisions need to be made.
Yeah.
And there's often this misconception, especially in the newer generations, that leadership is about being at the front, on social media, on LinkedIn, doing presentations. But leadership for me is way more than the shine, the physical presence. It's also about morals. It's also about empathy. It's also about creating space for others. And for me, a true leader takes all of these aspects into consideration. And that's besides all of the things that you need to do to be a good leader, right? The practical, functional things.
Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned also, Miles, you said creating a vision, and then putting it into practical goals for the team. How do you develop that skill? How can people actually develop the skill of creating that vision?
I think it relates to the question, are leaders born or created? That's always a debate. But if I look at myself and where I want to go in life, and I'm far from where I would want to be, but I go back to the way I grew up. I think we all have that in common, living on an island. Living isolated from what we call the world. And I grew up in Bonaire, which was even smaller compared to Curacao. We had about maybe 10 to 11,000 people living there back then. And the essence of that, growing up now, I understood, that's where that comes from. You mentioned something, empathy. Empathy comes in on how you deal with your neighbors. You're very close. You see each other every day. You're in the same school. There's only one school. You have the same friends, the only few friends that you can choose from. Talk about understanding cultures. We live on islands that have the sample of the world in one. We talk about pang Portuguese and talk about as a normal thing, but that's very unique in a foreign African slavery injected culture in the Southern Caribbean. We talk about the way we see the world. We were so trained to understand US, to understand Europe, to understand South America, not only in languages, but actual in culture, that really shapes us, I think, as 𝐭𝐻𝐿 to be very, very instrumental leaders in the world, and very unique because we possess some kind of energy or era based on our upbringing of having nothing, of having playing in the field outside and knowing, when we go home, I'm speaking for me as well, but when we go home, when the lights turn on at 7, that's something very of Curacao or of Bonaire. And I think those are the elements that really shaped of who I am today. And also to be more in line in understanding the importance of the energy of people. And when we talk about energy, isn't something crazy. It's the simple fact on how you deal with each other and how you want to be portrayed and how people portray you and what you bring to the table. And I think that's really, really thanks to the upbringing in a environment that wasn't, let's say, glimmer and glamour and everything was there. It was sitting in a room, in a class, there's an old table, the same book from the previous years you use, and you scrap it and with a 𝐭𝐲. Those are the essence, I think, that built character and that really gave me my feeling and understanding of leadership of where we are today.
Interesting. So being, if I understand it correctly, being from a unique place that has all these cultural influences, that has and comes from a place that does not have a lot, so as its people,
limitations,
right? And that means that foster that imagination of thinking bigger, because we have the connection with every place, and that fosters basically the ability to understand more people better and stuff like that. So if I can extrapolate that a little bit, there's also like a call to action to more people from Curacao to understand that the uniqueness, or not Curacao, but only the whole Caribbean, the uniqueness of being there, basically already put the DNA of leadership in you. So to take that step a little bit more often.
Correct. And that's what I hope that as professionals or as youngsters in Curacao, we do not see that as a limitation or see it as something, because we're from a small island, we cannot compete in the global scale. And you see people sitting here for working for different companies around the world. It's all based on leadership coming out of Curacao, and that's possible. And that's the main message I try to always strive to share with the world, and especially from our islands, dream big. And that's something that we oftentimes neglect based on the way of thinking, not in abundance, but thinking of, because we're small, because we're limited, it's not possible to be in such positions.
Yeah. And not just neglect. I think we often underestimate it.
Yeah.
Samantha and I had this conversation now a week or two back. And I think intrinsically, when you're growing up in an environment where there's a lot of different cultures, languages, people from different contexts, we intrinsically get skills on board that we're not aware of. And then when we get in the bigger, wider world, we slowly, gradually realize how valuable these skills are. And just to echo a bit what Miles said, I think it's an important message, especially for the youth from the islands in general, or from any place with a diverse background. Please be aware that this skill is super valuable and will help thrust your career into places that you cannot imagine.
Can you give an example of that? Because I totally recognize what you're saying, but perhaps an example can also make it more practical for the people listening.
A very simple example. Again, thinking about our diverse backgrounds. When I first came to the Netherlands and I started my professional career, one of the things that was happening back in those days, so I'm talking mid 2000s, was that Dutch companies were hiring more and more foreign people. So people from India, people from Spain, from Portugal. And very slowly, I started realizing that outside of the people that come from a monoculture, that are not used to negotiating, translating, communication, voicing opinions across cultures, if you're not used to that, it's actually incredibly difficult. And these are things that we pick up from the schoolyard in Curacao or Bonaire. It's things that we learn when we're out and about doing simple things. It's actually skills that, at least for me, was incredibly valuable in the Netherlands. And that's when I started realizing, wait a moment, we have something that's unique, that there's not a lot of people that can offer this. And that's what has Samantha where she has today. And I know of many people from our high school that have actually ended up in Fortune 500, quote 500 as they call it, Netherlands companies in quite senior roles. And in my opinion, it's due to this intrinsic skill that we have in our back pocket without knowing it.
Right.
Yeah, it is. I think that's a superpower. So that's something, it's a competitive, it's maybe an unfair advantage even. Because when you're from the Caribbean or any other culture where you need to adjust, that's what makes us different, right? We can adapt from language. Most of us speak 4 languages by default. So that already makes our brain to constantly need to adapt from Dutch to Spanish to Papiamento to English. And it comes to us, of course, we speak 4 languages, whereas somebody else who speaks 1 language is not even used to that. So we already grow up adapting between 4 languages almost on a daily basis. Then we go to a big country, we go to Europe, we go to the US, and all of a sudden, that skill we have from a very small age, we adapt to people. And doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, there's something we can find that connects us. And I think to your point, Dan, and on your point as well, Miles, that's what is our superpower. And because we're from the Caribbean, because we're from Curacao, we also have that added benefit of our energy levels usually are higher. So people immediately feel at home with us. They feel the vibe and they're like, oh my God, I want more of that, right? Because we make people feel at home. And I wish for everyone to have that, honestly.
And is this part of what you were saying about being a leader and trusting your leadership skills without the title?
Yes.
So having this background, you can lead without having the promotion yet, basically?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's not about what I see, right? What I see in my workplace is that people think I need to study more, I need a promotion. It's very theoretical, very black and white. Whereas us here as our culture, it's not about that. It's about how do I connect? How do I build teams? How do I, lead people forward? So it's much more, and this is something else, by the way, we are so good at dealing with crisis situations.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
there's like no internet for 2 days. I saw the flow drama go down. Or, we don't have electricity for a full day. What are we going? So we are wired to deal with crisis situations. And it comes very handy at big companies as well as in public leadership spaces. It's the crisis. Oh, of course, we will deal with it.
Yeah,
We'll figure it out.
It's so interesting because one of the questions that I had was, how does our cultural background help us in leadership position? And it's exactly what you're saying is dealing with improvising at the moment, because it's not planned when a blackout will happen. It's not planned when the internet is off, or also what you were saying regarding the empathy part is because if we can switch languages, if we can switch understanding cultures, that means you already come from that understanding perspective. So basically you can also show more empathy because you have a better understanding.
Yeah, and I'll take it a step further, right? So when we think about cultural background and we think about where we're from, at least from Curaçao, Bonaire is probably the same, and you have this multiculture of people that are descendants of African slaves, and we also have a big chunk of people that are coming from the Netherlands. The way of thinking when it comes to leadership from these two different cultures is extremely different. Typically, within at least the native Curaçaoan mentality when it comes to leadership, there's always this push and pull between seeking leadership, seeking to be led, but also not always trusting leadership. Versus in the Dutch culture, you have a much more flat, non-hierarchical way of dealing with leadership, where we have a consensus culture, right? A poldermodel. And I think when you're coming from Curaçao or Bonaire, or again, somewhere where there's a lot of different cultures, you also learn to lead in completely different ways, meaning the population that needs to be led requires different tools in different scenarios. And this is also something that we have in our back pocket that, again, I was never aware of. I never had the ambition to become a leader. And it's only in the middle of my professional career that I realized, oh, wait, this is what I've learned when dealing with Dutch people when it comes to, some sort of conflict or crisis. And this is what I learned when dealing with crisis within the more native population of Curaçao. And these skills transfer very well into corporate leadership roles.
Interesting. And so you also mentioned making hard decisions. Do you still remember at least one example, because there will be more of them, that you had to make a hard decision or that you learned a hard lesson in being in a leadership position? I'll start with you, Samantha.
So many.
Yeah, so many. We need like a weekend. No, I think what I personally find the hardest is I'm a very positive person by default. And I think that, again, comes with the culture. We look at the glass half full because we know what it's really like to struggle. So in the workplace, I'm very positive, and people tend to think that I'm always happy. Now, that's not the case, but people think I'm always happy. And I operate in a culture where there's a lot of taking things for granted, or not being happy with a role somebody has, etc. So we had a reorganization. Wait, where are we living now? So I think a year ago. And coming out of that reorganization, so many people were unhappy. Unhappy with their role, unhappy with where they got landed, etc. And that for me is hard because I know how many people lost their job. And so I know how many people don't have a job to begin with. And here I have teammates who have a job, who survived the organization, and still they come every day to work with a face that says, I don't want to be here. And I find that hard because I keep my positivity no matter what. But I have come to realize during those moments that no matter how my energy level is, or how I try to show people, the positive side, I cannot change people and their character. So for me, that was, or is still, the hardest realization. I can be the best leader I can to contribute to a positive culture, et cetera, et cetera. But when people are generally not happy, or negative, I need to let go.
Step back.
Yeah, step back. And I find it hard.
Yeah, that's a good one. Miles?
Miles, one that you can share?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was trying to get which one to share, and I was listening as well, of course, and the difficulty is, okay, which direction would you take? So I'm going to try to do both. One of that is on a personal level. So of course, leadership isn't only on your work floor, and I think the best leaders are created. And if everybody has the potential to be a leader. It isn't like something that you can only be it if you have a master's. No, everyone has the potential. So the first one was, to me, the realization that leaders operate outside of their comfort zone. If you are too long in your comfort zone, if it's a business, if it's your work, if it's your thing you study, whatever it is, that means you're not actually living your full potential and leadership value to be able to influence or inspire others. So one of the first lessons on a personal level was I operate the best whenever I am in something that it's beyond outside my comfort zone. That means it triggers, it feels like, I don't know, you're sweaty, you're like, whatever it is, that means you're doing something right. And back then I was always thinking, oh, that means there's something wrong. Let me go back to whatever feels more comfortable, that I can just sit down in the back of the class. So from 16, 15 years old, I understood that the assignment to be able to give meaning to the definition of leadership without knowing what it was living outside of my comfort zone on everything that we do. And it doesn't mean YOLO, doesn't mean you're partying every day, that people misinterpret that sense, but actually doing stuff that are risky and that put you in the front seat of being, let's say, exposed to environments that are new. And then if we go back to, let's say, the workforce, you've mentioned it in the beginning, making unpopular decisions or taking the lead to confirm the unpopular decision. And especially in living on the islands, we have a culture that we always want to be liked. And you always want to be the good guy, the 𝐭𝐡, the one that you're invited to all, and you won't want to miss out. And you see it in the political field. You always try. Let me give you some clear examples. We're still discussing today about an oil refinery that we knew many years ago that will not come back.
Right.
However you want to say it. So that's an unpopular decision. And to me, when I got the glimpse of what politics was, and then immediately stepped out, but okay, that's a different story. The glimpse of it, I was confronted that I was informed by everyone around me, you're going to lose your election if you're going to say that you do not believe the refinery will open again. And I had a moment, it was a few nights I couldn't sleep. And I was like, okay, if I want to be authentically myself, and remain with that comment that I know for the future it will not come back, as my parents were oil refinery workers, my grandparents were, I know we live in Amistad, it will not come back, and be true to it, or then just go with the flow and say, be comfortable and say, oh no, it's going to open in 4 years and I'm going to make it happen. And I chose the first one, which achteraf, when I lost, people told me, right, that was the wrong decision. You should have just told them that you're going to open a refinery. And it's like, maybe leadership is also about that, about being real, about being authentic. And if you're losing something, maybe you're gaining something along the way. And that gain is being authentic, being true, that I can always talk very freely and openly about it. And also going home with the sense of, oh no, but this, at least I've confronted that fear, that moment where I had to make the decision of going out in a debate and say yes or no. So to me, and those are clear examples of what I think leadership means to me, and where in my life, a few times, of course, I've experienced that moment that you need to make decisions,
right,
and not always being the popular one. And there was a famous quote, if you want to be liked by everyone, just sell ice cream, then you're always safe. But we're not in the ice cream business, so unfortunately. But that's still on my agenda.
Yeah. And Daniel, for you?
For me, there's so many, again. For me, as an introvert also, one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn as a leader was, before I became a leader, I would be able to spend extra time, extra hours, working late into the night, put more effort, right? It's like fuel on a fire. I could pour more fuel on the fire, and that would bring me to where I wanted to be. That would bring me to success. And as a leader, I very quickly found out that you can't make people do things that you would like to do, right? So the tools that I had in my bag when I was working for myself, right, as a consultant, a senior consultant, suddenly weren't the tools that I could use in a leadership position to motivate people to progress, to achieve some of our goals. So one of the hardest lessons for me was realizing that, and I go back to the word empathy and maybe even perspective thinking, where I had to take a step back and create space for others to, progress or achieve some of the goals that I was setting in ways that were foreign to me. And that took some time. But looking back, I am so happy that I took that lesson, 5-6 years ago, because it's something that I'm still getting value out of it today.
What advice would you give somebody from or not from Curacao or Bonaire or the Caribbeans or maybe from here to take into account if they step into a leadership position? I mean, you recently took a new role, so this whole organization is now part of under your leadership. So it's also very fresh in your mind. What type of advice would you give somebody, especially young people, to consider if stepping into the leadership role?
My first advice, and that I've learned along the way, isn't something that I was born with, is listening. And it sounds very, very simple, but it's the hardest thing that you can do. Especially, for example, from my background, I'm an extrovert. Extrovert says, they tend to talk a lot, and then you say, okay, but what's the problem? Oh yeah, that's what you said. But along the way, and I've been exposed to several environments in new roles, either in Aruba, in Bonaire, and Curacao, and the thing that has helped me the most was the essence and understanding that I need to learn to listen. And why do I say listen is whenever you step in a leadership role, you tend to believe that you're going to be the one changing it. You have the answers. You have everything that you think that you need, and you're going to do it that way. That's not leadership. And listening means that the people around you, make sure you surround yourself with the smartest people in the room, with the people that really, really inspire and want to believe in the same direction of movement that you would want to do, and listen to them and let them guide you on that way. I think that is something as a simple tool of just listening to your stakeholders, to your people talking, and transform that into the bigger vision is what leadership is about, because you need to be able to walk with them to be able to achieve something bigger. And oftentimes they have the answers and they have the know-how. And that's something that I've learned along the way, but also in my new role, I'm putting it. And I always say, for example, I stepped into this new role talking about different economic pillars and investment, which I was never exposed to. I was always in tourism, doing the fun stuff, helping people, flying, avión trabajo, hotel, it was tourism. And now I'm talking, and I still remember when I posted I'm going to CNEX, people say, what does the guy from tourism knows about this, this, and this? That's the perception that people think automatically. But leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about really allowing yourself into being exposed to it and understanding it. And now the first thing I did, since I started in January, was to listen to everyone. And it gives me fuel and it gives me empowerment to be able to transform all of that I'm listening into actionable plans for the future. And that's where we are today. And that's where I am today as well. And I'm really, really enjoying the ride on it. And that will be my main advice to people stepping into new roles, new environments. Listen to your surroundings.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Samantha?
You just activate. I want to say trigger. I prefer the word activated. You activated something in me, Miles, because you say you made a comparison with your expertise in tourism versus this new role. And what I heard sitting here is that, hey, you don't know everything yet, and you're figuring it out. And that's, I think, what my advice would be for everyone who steps into leadership. or decides to be a leader, drop the mask. Don't try to pretend like you know everything and things, because people connect with authenticity. They connect with a leader that doesn't know everything, and a leader who is not afraid to admit that. So that would be my number one advice, to drop the mask and authentically share. Authentically share. And the other one is celebrate failure. And so I think people underestimate the power of failure, because you cannot be successful without failing, because failing is learning. And it's what I see often is people don't want to take a step into a new direction, into a new role, into doing something outside of their comfort zone, because they're scared of failure, scared of judgment, scared of rejection. Whereas when you welcome and accept those things, that's when you grow. So, yeah.
That's a really you've nailed it, and I was feeling it, and I couldn't put in words. You've nailed it.
That's the one. Celebrate failures.
Yeah, and I like that. I actually love it, because I think when we create space where it's okay to make mistakes, or environments where it's okay to make mistakes, and this would be my recommendation, right? If you are about to go into a leadership position, very much as what Samantha is saying, try to create space for people to, in a safe way, make mistakes. Because mistake making is where we learn the most. If we're in that comfort zone, like Miles mentioned, and we're just going about our day, doing the same thing day in, day out, year in, year out, that's not where we learn. We learn where we make mistakes. It forces us to go do research, interview different people, find out things that you're not aware of today. The other recommendation that I would have for a future leader, or someone that has the ambition to become a leader, is to really think about leading from the back, right? Again, not having this ego-driven ambition to become a leader, but think about I would almost call it the objective of the group, before you start thinking about your own reasons to moving into a leadership position. As long as you understand the group objective, then you're able to be a good leader, and not the other way around.
So basically,
removing the ego,
not doing it for what advances can you get, but more how can you advance the group that you're
as a collective. Exactly. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, are there any resources that are available that you know of, or that you might recommend for people to take a hold of, to grab on, to become a better leader?
I mean, there's so many. Samantha can speak a little bit about the work that she does. But before you do that, I think what's important, again, when you get into that leadership position, being comfortable with not knowing that you don't know, it requires constant evolution, constant research, reading, and it doesn't matter what you read, as long as you keep developing yourself, because these perspectives will help you in the day-to-day work when it comes to being a leader. But Samantha, you've been doing some great work.
So what I focus on at the Powerhouse Code is really helping women unlock their talent DNA. And why do I focus on women specifically? Because women have a lot of barriers, systemic, external barriers, but also internal barriers of a lot of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, second-guessing, etc. So the work I do is not focused on theory or what makes a good leader. You need to, learn, for example, how to have crucial conversations, those type of things. But it's really looking at a person, looking at their unique talent DNA, and then saying, okay, how can you bring that uniqueness into the world? That's it. So it's not about shaping or making you into someone different or someone you're not. It's about taking you as perfect as you are and then helping you articulate your value in the workplace.
I think, Miles, you're the perfect example of this, right? Someone that has had a passion in tourism, now moving into something completely different, but that can also benefit our environment and our countries and our islands.
Correct. Definitely. And to your question, I think finally we always tend to think that the tools are that book or that podcast that you need to follow. At the end of the day, it's you.
Yeah.
And if you make sure that you surround yourself with people who inspire you, who dream big, who support you, who doen gun factor, etc. Those are the best tools, because people follow energy. People, you get inspired by energy, and they always say make sure that you surround yourself with the people that you would want to see in the future, that who you will be or you will want to be. And back home we have a saying where the grandma always says, "Bisame que momigo and tell you how far you will go. Tell me who your friends are, tell you how far you will go." That's exactly, I think, the essence, the biggest and most important tool that we need to have as people growing up from the Caribbean, especially in Curacao as well. Make sure you surround yourself with greatness. Otherwise, you limit your opportunities on philosophy of life and understanding of life. And it doesn't mean that the doors will open automatically, but it gives you a head start of just the purpose, who you are, and where you would want to go.
Amazing, amazing.
I'll add one last thing. Leadership is not the goal. It's a means to an end. And again, I think there's a lot of people that have the ambition to become a leader. If that's your starting point, you need to reorganize, replan that strategy. It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
It's not the goal.
But most likely for the people that start from a position that they want to become a leader just for the sake of being a leader, I think the leadership role itself would humble them quickly enough.
Very quickly, very quickly.
Or push them out.
Or push them out.
Exactly.
Right? That to step back into the position that they actually be maybe even starting to learn to lead from the back instead of trying to be on the front. So we're coming a little bit to the end of the podcast right now. So I have one final question, even though you guys already gave the few good advices for the people listening. But what would be the final words for the people watching this episode regarding leadership in general?
Final words. I already gave my final words, right? Yeah.
I'll use yours as a good one to end this session. For the people watching this, thank you for watching this episode. I really enjoyed it, not only for the whole day, but also for personally to hear your stories and the lessons that you guys learned from being in leadership positions and also having a background from Curacao. So I hope you guys enjoy this as well. Make sure to like and leave a comment underneath these videos, and check out the previous episodes as well. And make sure to check in the description the link to these wonderful people and whatever resources they have available for you. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.